In this case, we are told that he had remembered what Yusuf alayhi salam had told him to do after several years. Now, is it possible that he forgot right away? For the dream and his release from prison were significant events. And man does not forget such significant events easily. If we say, if that is the case, then why did he not carry out Yusuf's request upon release? Was it his fear that he might offend the king so soon after his release from prison by doing so? This is perhaps the most logical reason, unless he was an extremely ungrateful man. He would have thus kept quiet for the sake of his personal well-being, and then thereafter he forgot, genuinely he forgot. He recalled Yusuf alayhi salam's knowledge in the interpretation of dreams when this episode took place, and asked that he be sent to the prison to see him alayhi salam. The expression, Ana unabbi'ukum bita'wili, I will inform you all of his interpretation, clearly underlines the trust and confidence he had in Yusuf alayhi salam's ability to provide the interpretation, despite the inability of all others to do so. When he arrived at the prison, he addressed Yusuf alayhi salam by saying, this is verse 46, Yusufu ayyuhas siddiqu aftina fi sab'i bakaratin simanin ya'kuluhunna sab'un ijafun wa sab'i sumbulatin khudrin wa ukhra yabisat la'alli arji'u ila an-nasi la'allahu ya'lamun. Yusuf, O righteous one, give us your judgment with regard to a dream in which 7 fat cows were seen eating 7 lean ones, thin ones, and 7 green ears of corn, and 7 dry ones, so that I may return to the people, so that they may know its interpretation. The expression, Ayyuhas Siddiq, O truthful and righteous one, underlines the trust and respect he had for Yusuf alayhi salam, and represents a testimony to Yusuf alayhi salam's lofty character. It also reminds us of the etiquette that Islam exhorts between student and teacher, and this is perhaps best exemplified in the episode between Musa and Khidr alayhi salam in Surah Al-Kahf of the Holy Quran. As for Aftina, give us a fatwa, literally. The plural pronoun therein implies that the dream was not this man's dream, and that he had approached him on behalf of the king. He then mentioned the dream in the exact same words as related by the king. Now this is important, for the words are essential to the correct interpretation of the dream. The interpreter tries to bridge between the words that are a representation of the faculty of imagination and that which corresponds to it in the physical world, because the dream is not from the physical world. Take milk, for example. It is deemed to represent knowledge, because it is the first thing that man depends upon for his life, just as knowledge is the first thing that man acquires in his life. The interpreters of dreams also say, if one sees the Prophet ﷺ in a dream, in his true form, he should adopt the literal command or prohibition of or message that he receives from the Prophet ﷺ, in keeping with the nature of compliance to the Prophet ﷺ when he was alive, or the keeping with the obligation of compliance to the Prophet ﷺ when he was alive. If a word in that command or message is ambiguous, not clear, or he received a thing from the Prophet, then that word and that thing should be interpreted. It has been narrated that a pious man saw himself slap the Prophet ﷺ in a dream. And he woke up extremely frightened and alarmed. Well, who would not? He woke up extremely frightened and alarmed by that which he had seen himself do. He sought that the dream be interpreted. And he was told that it implied disrespect to and violation of a commandment of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. The fact that the face was involved indicated that it was a major violation. The man reflected, but could not think of a serious sin that he had committed. Could not recall any serious sin that he had committed. The interpreter was a learned and trustworthy man, and he thus could not reject his interpretation either. He returned home very sad, and his wife inquired about the reason, and he told her. She was shocked by what she heard from her husband and said, "You had sworn," she told the husband, "you had sworn that if I entered the house of one of your friends, I would be divorced from you. I was passing by their door one day when they insisted that I drop in. I agreed, for I felt shy to reject their hospitality, and I entered their house, but I did not inform you out of fear." So that was the violation. They repented to Allah, and the woman completed her waiting period for divorce, and they were remarried. So the sin was that they were having an adulterous relationship as a result of the conditional divorce that had taken effect unknown to her husband. Yusuf alayhi salam responded. Now this man has come to the prison, asking him to interpret the dreams. He said, قَالَ تَزْرَعُونَ سَبْعَ سِنِينَ دَأْبًا فَمَا حَصَدْتُمْ فَذَرُوهُ فِي سُنبُلِهِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ ثُمَّ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ سَبْعٌ شِدَادٌ يَأْكُلْنَ مَا قَدَّمْتُمْ لَهُنَّ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تُحْصِنُونَ ثُمَّ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ عَامٌ فِيهِ يُغَاثُ النَّاسُ وَفِيهِ يَعْصِرُونَ 47 to 49. Yusuf alayhi salam, this is the interpretation of the dream. He said, you all would sow and harvest for 7 years continuously. And whatever you harvest, leave it in its ears. You know the leaves? Why? So that it is not infested with worms and weevils. You remove it, it will be infested. Except for a little that you consume, that you need to consume. Thereafter would come 7 difficult years, meaning famine. And during these years, all that you have stored would be exhausted. But save a small portion so that they may be used for sowing. You need seeds for sowing. After those 7 dry years would come an year in which the people would receive rain. And they would obtain juice and oil from that which they cultivate, meaning from grapes and other crops like olives and sesame. This is the general meaning of these verses. And a number of issues have to be examined here. Firstly, with regard to the linguistic aspects, there's a difference between al-harth, which refers to plowing the land and planting the seeds, and azar, which refers to the process of growing and ripening. This is clear from verses 63 to 65 for Surah Al-Waqi'ah. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ زَارِعُونَ. So you see the words تَحْرُثُونَ and تَزْرَعُونَ. لَوْ نَشَاءُ لَجَعْلْنَاهُ طَعْمًا فَظَلْتُمْ تَفَكَّهُونَ. Do you all not see the seeds that you plant? مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. Are you all the ones who make it grow? Or are we the ones who cause it to grow? أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ زَارِعُونَ. If we choose to, we can make it dry and rotten, and then you will be left spellbound. As for da'ban, it implies the condition of continuous strife and effort in work. It implies a clear habit. As for shidad, the plural of shadida, it means severe, hard and difficult. He had described those 7 years with this adjective. There's no doubt that the hunger brought about by a famine can be more severe than imprisonment and even death. As for yughathu, it is in the passive form of Ghatha Yagithu, that is to rain. It can also be the passive form of Yaguth, to receive help. And both meanings complement one another. Secondly, Yaguth, to relief and help. And both meanings complement one another. Secondly, Yusuf alayhi salam's instant response, without hesitation and seeking, to reproach the king's messenger, who had not carried out the favor Yusuf alayhi salam had requested from him, alludes to the duty of the learned to provide knowledge to those who need it without seeking a favor, without seeking anything in return. It also tells us that a man should not think that it is his right to be respected and pleased, but he should perform his obligations for the sake of Allah, no matter what. The years that Yusuf alayhi salam had spent after that incident would have also made him wiser and increased him in conviction that the best option was to place his trust in Allah for his release. It is also part of Islamic etiquette to honor the messenger or envoy of a man of position and dignity. Thirdly, the mention of extraction of wine and oil by Yusuf alayhi salam was not stated in the dream, but it was an addition based upon revelation. It could also be part of the dream that the king did not recall when he woke up. And part of the knowledge in this field includes the ability to inform of a dream even before it is mentioned. When this servant of the king returned to the king and informed that which Yusuf alayhi salam had mentioned, he commanded his men to bring Yusuf to his presence. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ الرَّسُولُ قَالَ ارْجِعْ إِلَى رَبِّكَ فَاسْأَلْهُ مَا بَالُ النِّسْوَةِ اللَّاتِي قَطَّعْنَ أَيْدِيَهُنَّ إِنَّ رَبِّي بِكَيْدِهِنَّ عَلِيمٌ. The king said, "Bring him to me." When the messenger came to Yusuf alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam said, "Go back to your master, go back to your king, and ask him, what is the state of mind of the ladies who had cut their hands? My Lord is fully aware of their plot." Now, several important points must be discussed here. Firstly, this verse implies that the Aziz and the king are one and the same person. Secondly, the reason why he did not mention the king's wife. Because he said, Ma balun niswa. He didn't specifically mention her. This can be attributed to several reasons. He did so out of respect and the desire to protect the honor of the king and his wife. Secondly, he had hoped that the woman folk would support his innocence, unlike Zulaykha, who was fending for herself and had opposed him because of his resilience. Thirdly, the king's wife had sought to force him to disobey Allah. And this is cause for great hatred in the presence of a true believer, and so he avoided mentioning her name. Thirdly, Yusuf's response, alayhi salam, when the messenger of the king arrived at the prison. Yusuf alayhi salam could have spurned the opportunity to be released from prison. He could have just blown it away, lost the opportunity. By making the statement he made, go back to your king, ask them what's the condition of the woman. So why did he do so? Was he not looking forward to the release at one time? Would anyone who had been wrongfully imprisoned for some 12 years not grab the opportunity to be released? The answer to this is that it underlines Yusuf alayhi salam's patience and resolve and his truthfulness, and that he regarded the removal of all blame from him and the establishment of his innocence and uprightness as being of paramount importance. In a narration, مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلَا يَقَعَنَّ مَوَاقِعَ التُّهَمِ. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, he should not put himself in positions where he would be wrongfully accused. The Prophet ﷺ praised Yusuf ﷺ for the stand he had taken. In a narration recorded by Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, when he ﷺ said, نحن أحق بالشك من إبراهيم إذ قال ربي أرني كيف تحيي الموتى. We are more deserving of doubt than Ibrahim alayhi salam when he said, "Oh my Lord, show me how you bring the dead to life." وَيَرْحَمُ اللَّهُ لُوطًا لَقَدْ كَانَ يَأْوِي إِلَى رُكْنٍ شَدِيدٍ. And he said, sallallahu alayhi, may Allah have mercy upon the Prophet Lut alayhi salam, for he used to have to resort to powerful support because of the severity of the opposition against him. وَلَوْ لَبِثْتُ فِي السِّجْنِ مَا لَبِثَ يُوسُفُ لَا أَجَبْتُ الدَّاعِي. If I had stayed in prison for the length of time Yusuf did, alayhi salam, I would have responded to the messenger who had come to release Yusuf from prison, meaning right away. In a narration recorded by Abdul Razzaq in his collection of hadith in Musannaf, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I am indeed amazed by Yusuf alayhi salam and his patience and nobility. لَقَدْ عَجِبْتُ بِيُوسُفَ وَصَبْرِهِ وَكَرَمِهِ. May Allah forgive him when he was asked about the lean cows and the fat ones. If I were in his place, I would not have responded until I had stipulated my release as a condition for the interpretation of the dream. I am indeed impressed by the patience and nobility of Yusuf, may Allah forgive him. When the messenger came to him, if I had been in his place, I would have hastened to the door before the messenger, but he wanted to establish proof of his innocence. Now, these statements of the Prophet ﷺ were made with the intention to deliver several important lessons. Firstly, a lesson in modesty and humility. He's saying, Yusuf is better than me. He's not. That's modesty and humility. Secondly, that praise should be given when due. Praise should be given when due. Some people find it difficult to praise others. Thirdly, to highlight the virtues of the attributes of patience and honorable conduct. Fourthly, that it is permissible for one to use his knowledge or whatever he possesses as a bargaining chip to secure personal benefit, or whatever he possesses to secure personal benefit and to gain an advantage, especially when he is trying to remove the injustice inflicted upon him. Fifthly, that a man who is unjustly dealt with is encouraged to seek a way out of his predicament and take the opportunity when it comes. Sixthly, that one can go to great lengths to establish his innocence, even though it may possibly bring about harm in some form or other. For self-honor is sacred. For self-honor is sacred. Yusuf alayhi salam indeed wanted to ensure that his release would not be construed to have been a reward for his interpretation of the king's dream. He wanted it to be clear to everyone that he was wrongfully imprisoned and that his release was based upon his own innocence. Yusuf alayhi salam also wanted to ensure that the threat of seduction that he had faced from the womenfolk had passed, was no longer there. Inna Rabbi bi kaydihinna alim, he said. My Lord does indeed know their plots. Linguistically, the word Rabbi, my Lord here, can refer to Allah, who indeed has knowledge of all things. It can also refer to the Aziz, who had given him food and lodging and treated him well. Here again, the implication that the Aziz and the Malik mentioned in this chapter with the same person is clear. As for the expression Kaidihinna, their plot, it indicates that all of the women folk had desired him and resorted to slandering him when they saw that it was impossible to seduce him. It could also be a reference to them having colluded with Zulaykha in her ill intentions and his imprisonment. Their plot must certainly include their encouragement to enforce, encouragement of Zulaykha to enforce her will and Yusuf to relent. The king complied to Yusuf's request and gathered the womenfolk and addressed them, saying, the king gathered the womenfolk and he addressed the woman, saying, قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُنَّ إِذْ رَاوَدتُّنَّ يُوسُفَ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. Beginning of verse 51. What was your intention when you all sought to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam? The womenfolk replied, قُلْنَا حَاشَ لِلَّهِ مَا عَلِمْنَا عَلَيْهِ مِنْ سُوءٍ. They replied, may Allah preserve us. We know no evil from him that we can hold against him. The wife of the Aziz then made her admission by saying, قالت امرأة العزيز الآن حصحص الحق أنا راودته عن نفسي وإنه لمن الصادقين. End of verse 51. The wife of the Aziz then said, now the truth has come clear. I am the one who sought to seduce him, and he is indeed a truthful man, meaning in his statement that I was the one who seduced him. What made Zulaykha make this confession? Was it the overwhelming evidence now stacked against her? Was it the noble gesture of Yusuf alayhi salam of not mentioning her when he asked the king to investigate the state of mind of the womanfolk that prompted her to reciprocate? It has been narrated that a woman brought her husband to court. A woman brought her husband to court and accused him of not having paid the dowry due to her. The judge ordered her to uncover her face so that the witnesses may ascertain her identity and give testimony. The husband said, "There's no need to do that. I acknowledge the truth of her claim. I acknowledge the truth of her claim." The woman responded, the wife, in the presence of the witnesses, saying, "Since you have honored me in such a way," and she told the husband, "Since you have honored me in such a way, I have exempted you from the payment of all that you owe me." Now there is no doubt that kindness and gentleness begets better and more positive results than force and high-handedness. We are reminded of this in a narration from the Prophet ﷺ recorded by Imam Muslim from the authority of Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. She said that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna rifqa la yakunu fi shay'in illa zana wa la yunza'u min shay'in illa shana." Gentleness and kindness would not be present in a thing except that it would make it pleasant, and it would not be removed from a thing except that it would make it unpleasant. ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمَ أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي كَيْدَ الْخَائِنِينَ. Verse 52. That is so that he may know that I did not act treacherously towards him in his absence, and that Allah does not give success to the plots of those who lie and deceive. Several queries must be answered here. Who said these words in verse 52? Were they the words of Yusuf alayhi salam or the words of Zulaykha? Why they were said? When were they said? If it was Zulaykha who said these words, she has sought to imply, after her admission in the previous verse, that she had never, in Yusuf's absence alayhi salam, made accusations against him. She stated that she knew that she would be exposed if she did so, for Allah does not guide the plots of those who intend to deceive. If it was Yusuf alayhi salam who said these words, he must have done so when the king's messenger came to him. It was perhaps a response to the king's messenger as to why he was making that request and not taking the opportunity to leave the prison. So he said, the reason is this, that he may know that I did not act treacherously towards him in his absence, in the king's absence, towards Zulaykha. He then said that Allah would make the plots of those who had behaved treacherously fail, to underline his conviction that Allah would absolve him from all blame and clear his name. So this verse provides overwhelming proof of Yusuf alayhi salam's innocence for a number of reasons. Firstly, if Yusuf alayhi salam had been guilty, he would not have sought from the king to make an investigation, for that would have been tantamount to exposing his own wrongs and reviving memories of that which he had forgotten. No man of intelligence does this. Secondly, that the woman folk had given their testimony once before, and this was their second testimony to his innocence. Similarly, the wife of the king had testified to his innocence, and this was also her second testimony. The first testimony to Yusuf's innocence was mentioned in verses 31 and 32 of this chapter. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي Inna nafsa la ammaratun bisu'i illa ma rahima rabbi, inna rabbi ghafurur rahim. I do not absolve myself from blame, for the soul is indeed inclined to evil, unless my Lord bestows His mercy. My Lord is forgiving and merciful. The explanation of this verse must follow the previous verse. If we ascribe those words to Yusuf, it would imply that he had realized, after initially praising himself, that his abstention from sin would not have been possible without Allah's assistance and guidance. He thus made the statement mentioned in this verse to underline that true praise belonged to Allah, who had preserved him, protected him from sin. As for him, he was a mortal like any other, and that it is the nature of man to be inclined to desires. He also underlined that it was the fear of God, coupled with divine mercy, that protected him from the evils of the animal self. He then stated that Allah was forgiving to those who repented and merciful in that He gives respite to those who incline to the evil desires and commit sin. The words of Yusuf a.s. also embody encouragement to those who had been guilty of the wrongs against him to repent. He a.s. had, as he did in prison, again resorted to taking the opportunity to advise and guide those around him. Anyway, he was a messenger, and that is his duty to do da'wah. It is indeed amazing that Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, should mention the reports of those who have said that when Yusuf a.s. said, ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمَ أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ, that is so that he may know that I did not behave treacherously towards him in his absence. Jibreel alayhi salam responded by saying, not even on the day when you had the thoughts you had. He then goes on to say that the ascription of the words in this verse to the wife of the king is the stronger interpretation. If we say that these words were the words of the wife, which is more likely as stressed by Ibn Kathir and other scholars of Tafsir, it implies that she had admitted to not being completely innocent from the responsibility of having tried to seduce Yusuf a.s. She admitted that she had acted treacherously towards Yusuf when she sought to put the blame on him and to have him wrongfully imprisoned. She said that this was, however, only part of human nature, and that she never bore any ill feelings or intended to willfully harm him a.s. The word Ammara is the personified form of Amirah and has been used to imply that man by nature is always inclined to the needs of the physical self and the worldly abode. It seldom inclines towards the spiritual realm. And when it attains an inclination to self-purification and closeness to Allah and begins to fight its physical desires and evil urges, it is called a nafsul lawwama, or the reproaching soul. A soul that is no longer hindered by the physical inclinations from the service of his Lord and feels at peace when engaged in Allah's service is called a nafsul mutma'innah. And the levels of this itmi'nan or tranquility vary in degrees. The next issue is the interpretation of ma, the particle ma in the phrase illa ma rahima rabbi. If it means man, meaning who, except whom Allah's mercy is upon him, It implies that all beings are inclined to the animal desires, except for those whom Allah blesses them with His mercy and protects them from sin, like the prophets and messengers and angels and His close servants. It can also be an adverb of time. They call it ma dharfiyya, in which case it means that the self is inclined to the desires, except during the time or period when it receives divine mercy from its Lord and is thus protected from sin. This verse thus indeed underlines the fact that abstention from sin is a divine blessing. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us this prayer: Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakkiha wa anta khayru man zakkaha anta waliyuha wa mawlaha. It's well known. You can even read it in your tajahud also. Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha. O Allah, bestow piety on my soul. Wa zakkiha, and purify it. Anta khayru man zakkaha. You are the best who can purify it. Anta waliyuha wa mawlaha. You are its guardian and protector. This is part actually of a longer narration recorded by Imam Muslim and other narrators. When Yusuf's innocence ﷺ and integrity had been proven beyond a shadow of doubt, the king asked that Yusuf ﷺ be brought before him. It has been narrated that when Yusuf ﷺ entered upon the king, he said this prayer: Allahumma inni as'aluka bi khayrika min khayrihi wa a'udhu bi izzatika wa qudratika min sharrihi. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi khayrika min khayrihi wa a'udhu bi izzatika wa qudratika min sharrihi. Oh Allah, I seek with your goodness from His goodness, the king's goodness. I seek with your goodness from His goodness. And I seek protection with your might and power from His evil. And I seek protection with your might and power from His evil. It has been narrated that when Yusuf a.s. was brought to the king, he was 30 years old. When the king saw that he was a young man, he said to his servant who served him drink, "Is this the man who gave you the interpretation of the dream which the sorcerers and the clairvoyants were unable to?" That servant replied, "Yes." The king turned to Yusuf and said, "I would like to hear the interpretation of my dream myself." So Yusuf informed him, and he was impressed by it and convinced of his truthfulness. And he said to Yusuf a.s., and this is verse 54, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. The king said, "Bring him to me, for I want to take him as my personal assistant." And when Yusuf a.s. arrived and the king spoke to him, the king said, "As of today, you have been fully established in rank and trust in our presence." The Arabic word mukna, from which makin is derived, means power, strength, and capability. The king had bestowed upon Yusuf a.s. power to act on his behalf and to manage his affairs. The point worthy of note here is that Allah refers to the ruler of Egypt with the word Malik. On the other hand, Allah refers to the rulers of Egypt in the episode of Musa a.s. by the title of Pharaoh, but not so in the episode of Yusuf a.s. Why is this so? Why is this so? In fact, we have here a historical miracle in the Holy Quran. The answer to this is that a military aristocracy had overrun Egypt at that time from northern Mesopotamia, known as the Hyksos. The Hyksos conquered much of Egypt. They were driven out at about 1550 BC. And it was only after the Hyksos were driven out that the rulers carried the title Pharaoh. Before that, Malik, kings. After that, pharaohs. Now, several factors and reasons were instrumental in Yusuf alayhi salam's rise to prominence. Firstly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made knowledge the reason for his removal from the trial and his elevation to be the king's advisor. Knowledge is indeed an important element, a necessary element for success in this world and the next. Secondly, Yusuf alayhi salam's patience and perseverance and upright conduct qualified him to be appointed to this status in the king's presence. Thirdly, his good conduct in prison must have made the king's servant an excellent character witness. Allah's messenger underlined that good conduct is an essential component of faith by saying, خَصْلَتَانِ لَا تَجْتَمِعَانِ فِي مُؤْمِنٍ الْبُخْلُ وَسُوءُ الْخُلُقِ. Recorded Imam Tirmidhi. Two character traits can never be found in a true believer: miserliness and evil conduct. There is no doubt that whoever possesses knowledge, devoutness and good conduct has been blessed with goodness in his entirety. The king then consulted Yusuf alayhi salam on what the course of action should be based on the dream. Yusuf alayhi salam told him that they should plant as much as possible during the fertile years, and that silos and warehouses should be built to store the extra produce. The stored grain can then be used for consumption and sold during the famine years, which would boost the finances of the kingdom. Yusuf alayhi salam then told the king to appoint him as the minister of land resources, Minister of Agriculture, if you like to call him, for he indeed possessed the qualities to manage them. By saying himself, Yusuf alayhi salam said, verse 55, قَالَ جَعَلْنِي عَلَى خَزَائِنِ الْأَرْضِ إِنِّي حَفِيظٌ عَلِيمٌ. He, Yusuf alayhi salam, said, put me in charge of the storehouses of the land, Egypt. I am indeed one who would guard it earnestly, meaning by ensuring that there is no overconsumption and misappropriation, and possess all the necessary knowledge for the purpose of managing them. There is no doubt that knowing what to do without proper planning and management is worthless. And Yusuf alayhi salam knew this and volunteered to take the responsibility. The person who manages them must also be trustworthy to ensure that no misappropriation results, but that would eat into the resources of the land. The Prophet ﷺ underlined the importance of these factors in a narration recorded by Ibn Majah. Recorded in the authority of Abi Dharr al-Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu, he ﷺ said, لا عقل كالتدبير ولا ورع كالكف ولا حسب كحسن الخلق. There is no intelligence like planning. لا عقل كالتدبير. There is no intelligence like planning, means like ability to plan. There is no intelligence like planning and management, that's tadbir. And there is no devoutness better than abstention. No devoutness, no wara better than abstention. And no nobility better than good conduct. Now this verse 55 tells us that it is the collective responsibility of believers, fardul kifaya, to ensure that there exist those who possess the knowledge in crucial and important areas in the management of the affairs of society and the governance of state. The possessors of such knowledge and expertise must step forward to fulfill this responsibility. Before we proceed, let us take a look at a number of issues raised by the Mufassirun, by the scholars of Tafsir. Firstly, it has been reported on the authority of Ibn Abbas that the Prophet ﷺ said regarding this verse, Rahimallahu akhi Yusufa, لو لم يكن اجعلني على خزائن الأرض لاستعمله من ساعته لكنه لما قال ذلك أخره سنة. May Allah have mercy upon my brother Yusuf alayhi. If he had not said, appoint me over the storehouses of the land, he, the king, would have appointed him at that very moment. But when he said those words, he delayed his appointment by a year. Now, these words do indeed draw attention to an amazing norm in the events pertaining to Yusuf alayhi salam. When he sought to be released from prison, his release was delayed by years, no less than 3 in number, up to a maximum of 10 years. However, when he refused to leave the prison, his release came about in the best and most honorable of ways, and immediately. Now, this points to the fact that Allah had taught Yusuf alayhi salam to entrust his affairs totally to him, and that this was better than his own efforts to realize his needs. Verse 44 of Ghafir, of the chapter Ghafir in the Holy Quran, tells us how Musa alayhi salam received Allah's help when he entrusted his affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's actually not Musa alayhi salam, it is the man from the family of the Pharaoh who received Allah's help when he entrusted his affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَسَتَذْكُرُونَ مَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا وَحَاقَ بِآلِ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ الْعَذَابِ. You all would recall what this is the man who was advising the Pharaoh not to, kill Musa alayhi salam. Okay? You all would recall what I am saying to you all, and I trust my affair to Allah. Allah indeed sees, and is thus well informed about His servants, and so Allah protected him from their plots, the plots of the Pharaoh and his people, and the family of the Pharaoh was encompassed by a terrible punishment. The next issue is that it is not power and rank that should be held in contempt, but how they are utilized. There's nothing wrong in having power and rank, but it's how you use your power and your rank. In Islam, position and power is not a booty, it's a great liability. In a narration recorded by Imam Muslim on the authority of Abdurrahman ibn Samurah, who said, the Prophet ﷺ said to me, O Abdurrahman ibn Samurah, do not seek leadership, for if you seek it and attain it, you will be left to fend for yourself. If it is bestowed upon you without you seeking it, you would receive assistance in it. And if you have sworn in Allah's name and find other than that which you have sworn upon is better, expire your oath and do that which is better. When it is recorded that when it was suggested to the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, that his son Abdullah be appointed in his place so that he would not be totally missed, he responded by saying, it is sufficient that one of the members of the family of Al-Khattab be called to account for the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why this response? Because power and leadership are saddled with a great responsibility in Islam, which is not easy to fulfill and deliver. This is also clear from the advice of the Prophet ﷺ to Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, as recorded in Sahih Muslim. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, he said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, why do you not appoint me as one of your governors? And Abu Dharr said that he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, patted me on my shoulder with his hand, and then he said, Ya Abu Dharr, you are weak, and it is a trust. And it would be on the day of resurrection reason for disgrace and regret, except for he who deservedly assumes it, meaning the leadership, and discharges the responsibilities that are laid upon him with regard to it. It is only the realization that man's power is not absolute and that Allah has more power over him that can keep a man in check from abusing his own power. Now, this lesson is best illustrated in the incident when the Prophet ﷺ saw Abu Mas'ud beating his slave and said to him, Allah has more power over you than you possess over this slave. And we had mentioned this previously when we were talking about slavehood in this chapter. Now, several questions can be asked with regard to Yusuf alayhi salam's eagerness to assume the position of Minister of Land Resources. Why did he not exercise some patience? Would not seeking control over the storehouses have raised suspicions about his intentions? The answer to this is that he was Allah's messenger. And it is the duty of the messengers and their responsibility to guard the well-being of the communities that they were sent to the best possible extent. His response was meant to avert the harm that the famine would bring upon the people. Whoever has knowledge of a harm that is about to befall a people bears the responsibility of informing them about it and protect them from it if he has the means to do so. In fact, the Holy Quran tells us the ant informed its fellow ants that Sulaiman's army is coming and said, enter your houses so that Sulaiman and the army does not trample. Even the ant showed social responsibility. And Yusuf alayhi salam gained the knowledge of the famine through revelation. And it is possible that he was instructed by Allah to seek and assume this position. If he had acted based upon his duty as a messenger, the consideration of the factors mentioned becomes irrelevant. How could he have bragged or praised himself by mentioning those attributes, underlying his qualifications as being the best person for the job? Does not Allah say in verse 32 of Surah Najm, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى? And so do not praise yourselves. He knows, Allah knows. Who is it that guards himself against wrong deeds? The answer to this is that praise is not prohibited at all times. What is prohibited is praise that leads to or is resorted to for the sake of pride and boastfulness and to attain that which is not permissible. The mention of praiseworthy attributes is used, for example, in the sciences of hadith literature to establish the reliability of narrators, ta'dil ruwah they call it, and also in the establishment of the reliability of witnesses, tazkiyatu shuhud. So what was the benefit of mentioning Inni Hafidun Alim? Yusuf alayhi salam, he said, I'm indeed Hafiz and I'm indeed Alim. The word Hafiz is the personified form of Hafiz, guard, protector. And this implied that he would be able to ensure that the excess yield is guarded through its storage in warehouses and that there is no wastage or overconsumption and misappropriation. As for Alim, which is the personified form, the stronger form of Alim, knowledgeable and learned, it implied that he possessed the knowledge to guard the resources and manage their distribution such that they would tide them over the famine years and at the same time increase the economic well-being of the state, and that there would be sufficient grain left for sowing when the rains come at the end of the 7-year drought. If guarding the welfare of the people of Egypt could not be attained except through his appointment, it was obligatory upon Yusuf alayhi salam to adopt this course of action. A theological principle of the divine law, or principle of the divine law, says, مَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبُ إِلَّا بِهِ فَهُوَ وَاجِبٌ. That without which an obligation cannot be fulfilled is obligatory too. Why is there no record of the mention of Insha'Allah, which would have illustrated his dependence upon Allah in the accomplishment of that duty, when he displayed his preparedness to assume the task of managing the storehouses? Al-Wahidi said that Yusuf's appointment was indeed delayed by a year as a form of punishment, as mentioned in the report by Ibn Abbas quoted earlier. However, an equally and more likely reason is that it might have created doubt in the mind of the king as to his ability. And if it is assumed that the king was a non-believer, then its omission would make even more sense. وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is verse 56. This is how we established Yusuf's power in the land of Egypt, which we will inshallah carry on next lesson.